Hello. So the picture I want to take with this video is about the debates around when we see a character in popular culture, whether it be in a TV format, whether it be in a film series, when they are changed to something that is unconventional in the sense that it runs different from what the prototype of that character has been so far, if I could put it that way. And there's a few topical examples of this. I've got somewhat mixed views on this, so what I'm going to do is give the examples and discuss a little bit about them individually. Um, Most recently, there was news about an artist who has reimagined the character of Hermione Granger. If you're familiar with the Harry Potter series, she is one of the central characters in Harry Potter, one of Harry's best friends, who was, of course, played by the actress Emma Watson, who is white. In a way, this reimagining has Hermione as black. Now, as I understand it, J.K. Rowling herself is open for the idea. I think that's quite important given that J.K. Rowling is her creator. So I think the creator, certainly, her word should have some weight. Um, Now, people have made the point that Hermione Granger, Hermione Norris is an actress, Hermione Granger is a fictional character as opposed to a real historic person. Hence, fictional characters should have some flexibility. My own feeling about this is I don't feel offended by it. I don't feel it's a bad thing. And if J.K. Rowling's okay with it, then so be it. I mean, there's never going to be another film series of Harry Potter anyway. There might years down the line be remakes, but everyone is going to automatically associate Emma Watson with the role anyway. So I don't think it's radically going to change anything. Um, Likewise, another topical example recently is with, well, actually, I'll come back to this one. Okay, so that's that. So you can have this fictional character who might be black. That's not what we are used to seeing her as, but that's an option. Now, I'm okay with it, but the only contention I would have is if you have an example of a character that's traditionally portrayed as black. So, for example, Shaft, right? Now, let's say you suddenly had a white actor was to play that role, it would be an almighty controversy. Or if you had an Asian character that was traditionally portrayed as East Asian or even South Asian, and again a white actor played the role, it would be an almighty outcry. I I do feel frustrated with the direction that the acting business, and I'm using an umbrella term there, but the acting business has taken in recent years. It's become incredibly politicized. If we look at the Oscars so white thing the last year, if we look at some of the traction of the narrative, it has been entirely about really, frankly, pushing a political agenda. And I think that's unfortunate because it takes away the fundamental entertainment factor, which is why most people go to the movies or most people watch TV, is for escape. I really think most people are more focused on that than the politics behind it. So I do feel that actors who are constantly pushing this, I feel somewhat irritated by their position. Number one, because I think they're being paid a lot of money, they're being paid to act. And I take a dim view of people who are basically getting money and complaining about being discriminated against. Frankly, it strikes me as biting the hand that feeds you. Sorry to put it bluntly, but that's how I feel about it. John Boyega, the actor who was in Star Wars, I recently saw him in Detroit. He's a good actor. But again, he was complaining about the lack of diversity on TV. I'm thinking, wait a second, dude. You've just appeared in a very successful film. You've been paid handsomely for that. What are you complaining about? So I take a dim view of actors, and I'm aware they might come from struggling backgrounds. But if you are currently in a position where you're relatively well off or you're doing well for yourself, it's one thing advocating for other people, but I think it's very, very important that you don't give the impression you're ungrateful. And that's where I think a lot of this narrative leads. It ends up just looking like whinging. And to most people living in the real world, i.e., outside the acting world, I think they take a dim view of that. maybe it comes with the territory. But this is something that's been going on for a few years now. I'm not suggesting it's entirely new. There's always been some controversies, but it really has been, like, to me, it seems like it's just a fad. It seems to be complaining for the sake of it. Anyway, I'm going to cite a few other examples. The controversy over Doctor Who. Now, again, there was a huge thing over this because the new Doctor Who is announced as the actress Jodie Whittaker. She's known from this TV series Broadchurch. I don't consider myself by any means a hardcore Doctor Who fan. I'm quite into it in the sense that I know all the Doctors. I like certain aspects of the show, but I'm not so into it that I could recite storylines and that sort of thing. But that obviously was quite a radical step because you've had so far 12 men playing the role. Suddenly, a woman takes the role. Now, I think people should give her a chance. I'm not a Doctor Who fan, but I think people should give her a chance. However, I am tempted to agree that the BBC is doing it just to tick boxes. And in a sense, that's a pity because then it would reflect on the actress like she's only there for tokenism, and that's unfair because, for all Doctor Who fans know, she could be a great doctor. She could really bring something to the role. I know previous actors have mixed views. Colin Baker and Peter Davison had different opinions about this. But I think the problem is that people have a perception it's not being done for originality, but it's being done for politically correct reasons. And that's what irritates people. I don't know. I mean, if I was a hardcore Doctor Who fan, I guess again the contention with Doctor Who is like Hermione Granger, he, Doctor Who, is a fictional character, a Time Lord. In this case, a type deity. He is by nature, if we're even going to use a pronoun, an alien with two hearts who's travelled through time and space. So, in that sense, the role in itself lends to a certain degree of flexibility. And each male Doctor has been radically different from the previous incarnation of the Doctor. So, from my knowledge of the show, it is actually in keeping with the essence of the Doctor to be radically different. So, in that sense, I think this is actually consistent with the show. But there are other fictional characters that I think that you can only change so much. James Bond. I'm sorry, ladies, but I don't think James Bond could ever be a woman. I just can't see a situation where you have a Jill Bond. She's good with gadgets and she's, she's a cougar or something with lots of men. I just can't see the idea working. And again, I think that would be purely to tick boxes primarily for feminist demands. Um, And to me, it just comes down to the politicization of the world of entertainment. And it's unfortunate because, like I say, people first and foremost go to the films, they go to the cinema, they go to the movie theater for escape. They don't want to, most people are just want to get on like and watch these something that they've been familiar with, something that they've been fans of for years. I think there are times when it looks blatantly obvious that there is an attempt to tick boxes. There was another recent example, Ghostbusters, which was, of course, recast, where the four leads were all women. Now, I think certain hardcore Ghostbusters fans took it too far by sending crude, derogatory, racist, and sexist messages, and they were that. So there's no point glossing over to the actresses. I watched it. I have to be honest. I found it quite entertaining. I do like the originals, but I can't say the new one was terrible. And I think sometimes critics are quick to judge something without actually seeing it. They just automatically thought, well, it's women, it's being done for PC, so it's going to be terrible, and they didn't bother to watch it. Um, so I'm going to summarize this with pointing out a few things that are obvious. With fictional characters, there is obviously more scope for flexibility in terms of casting than there would be for historical characters. Clearly, if you have a white actor playing Martin Luther King, it would be absurd. If you have a black or Asian actor playing, I don't know, President Clinton or Queen Elizabeth I, it would be absurd because it is simply not historically authentic. And I think when it is so blatant that the purpose is political correctness and not authenticity, that's ridiculous. So if I was a film director, I would be quite I would be quite insistent on as much authenticity as possible because that's the whole point of portraying a role. It's to look like the character that you're portraying, whether it be a historic role or a fictional role. But I do think there's more scope for flexibility in fictional roles. Having said that, if people are going to say, I mean, I've heard the caveat to this, and it basically is, oh, well, there is no double standards because black people have had to put up with whitewashing for years and it's race baiting. You can't, in the end of the day, if you're going to cry racism, you can't preach double standards, regardless of the historical context. And I'm well aware that Hollywood and other entertainment mediums have been guilty of whitewashing in the context of the word as we're using it here, roles that were black or Asian. Now, there's things to look at. Hollywood, I think, being honest, there was sloppiness in the past in terms of recruiting actors who could have done those roles. Hollywood's a big, powerful film industry. However, I think people should cut slack for smaller companies. For example, if you have an independent production outside a national capital where there might be actually um, limited actors of diverse background, then you cannot blame. I'm familiar with a local production whereby they had roles of Chinese characters and the roles were played by white people. But the simple reason for that is there is simply not enough Chinese actors in the area where I live to play the roles. So I don't buy that every time a character is from another ethnic background from what they're expected to be, then it must be racism, it must be white privilege. There might be reasons, practical reasons, why that is the case. I also made the point when some of these controversies were going on. Well, wait a second, you get Shakespearean productions, the stories of which are set in Renaissance Italy or medieval Europe, where the entire cast has been black or Asian. No, I don't care. I think Shakespeare is world famous, is flexible. But if you're going to make a thing about an all white cast, then why is it okay to have an all black cast or an all Asian cast? That's what I cannot stand about the double standards of the race debate. And it's not good enough saying, oh, but the history of traditionally the whites were always the privileged ones, therefore they can never talk about double standards. I don't buy that. No, sorry. I'm talking about today, and I'm applying standards today. You can talk about the past, you can talk about injustices of the past, but it shouldn't be about getting even. It should be about just common sense. Now, common sense to me is that characters should be portrayed in the most realistic way. I do think that fictional characters is grounds for more flexibility. Doctor Who is an alien. He's a fictional character. They are a fictional character, so there is more scope for the role to be a woman. James Bond was specifically written as a man. So if James Bond was to suddenly become a woman, I think it would be an injustice. That's another thing we can't overlook. The original intention of the writer or screenwriter or director does matter, in my opinion. Um, because if you change it so much and say, "Oh, this is a fictional character," then you're changing the the way that character was originally written. So if you suddenly make James Bond a woman, I think that's different from Doctor Who. James Bond isn't an alien. James Bond was written as as a British male spy in the 1930s, who in all likelihood was white. Um, that's not racist. It's not sexist. It's just a fact. So casting a black woman as James Bond would be as unbelievable as casting, I don't know, a white British guy as Shaft in the 1970s. It just wouldn't be believable. So summed up, I think it is unfortunate that there's two angles. Number one, you get hardcore fans who sometimes overreact to these things. And they sometimes are quick to rush to judgment, sometimes vitriolic, I might add, without giving the actor a chance. On the other hand, it's hard to escape the fact that there is a politicization going on here, and it is blatantly obvious. And the likes of Black Lives Matter, they don't care about entertainment. All they want to do is politicize every damn thing in sight. And that's what they're doing. And it irritates me because it's divisive by nature to politicize everything and try to find racism in every single thing. Now, the creator of this depiction of Hermione Granger as black said that she was shocked by the level of racism that she saw. I can believe that there are certain people who would take a racist attitude and get vitriolic about it. I think that's uncalled for. I think you can make an argument without resorting to racist mudslinging. However, I think that would be an example where clearly it's just being politicized for the sake of it. No, like I say, J.K. Rowling herself, as I understand, was okay with it. But why change the character? Why? What is the purpose of that? That would be my question. Um, and the only answer I can think of is to make a point. So, to those who are more interested in the politicization and race baiting of the world of entertainment, they seem to be more interested in that than the actual entertainment factor. And as for actors who are always whinging about diversity, my suggestion would be focus on acting. That's what people pay to go to the cinema. That's why you're getting six-figure wages. I'm sorry, but I don't have much time for people who complain about the lot when they are on a very healthy salary. I've no time for it, even if they are a great actor. And unfortunately, I think there are a lot of actors who are jumping on the bandwagon from all backgrounds and just talking about, oh, the entire industry is white, which is factually not true anyway. But just because one particular program doesn't have every single check, I mean, this guy, I think, yeah, but John Boyega was complaining that Game of Thrones was too white. Well, I'm sorry, Game of Thrones, as I understand it, is set in a medieval context. It's broadly speaking a medieval sort of theme. It's fictional, but it's set in that context. Now, medieval Europe, especially the medieval British Isles, was 99.9% white. Why is it absolutely necessary to have a checklist for one black person, one Asian person, one disabled person, one lesbian, one gay person in every single production? Diversity is a good thing. And certainly there has to be opportunities for actors from ethnic minority backgrounds. I agree with that. I understand that. What I don't agree with is politicizing every damn thing and saying that every single thing has to be 100% ticking boxes. It's nonsense. And if I was a director and I'd cast someone from a minority background because I felt they were right for the role, whether they were right for the character or I was impressed by their acting skills, then a month down the line I heard them talk about, oh, there's a lack of diversity in the film industry. I'd feel, well, wait a second. I gave you an opportunity. I brought you onto my film. Why are you complaining? So I just don't have much sympathy for the argument. Oh, feel sorry for me. Even if they have been from a struggling background, the point is they're doing well now. And it's one thing being an advocate, but if you're being an advocate and you're giving the impression that you're grumbling about your lot when you're on a six-figure salary, I have no time for that. Thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts.